And I told you so. I'm a kid in the candy store. Put the leather on the denim. I ain't the cure, I'm the venom. If you wanna find me, find the taillight. Something's coming in, you're gonna wanna take a red eye. It's time to go. It's time to go. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready. Don't blink, don't blink.
Good afternoon to all of you, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. This is Paglinawan, ang Maestro, reporting for duty. A slight delay because of my medical diagnostics this afternoon. But I insisted on coming up even late at 6 p.m. because things are going out of hand in the Philippine debate over the South China Seas. And today's episode is entitled Lunacy over Traitors. Why? Because the government apologists and the apologists for the foreign control of our foreign policy have gone from non sequitur to ad boculum to ad hominem. Non sequitur, of course, is no more logic. It doesn't necessarily follow. Number two, ad boculum, is when you stop talking and you start beating on the table. And ad hominem is when you resort to insults and character assassination. And to my mind, this is a deliberate attempt of the Bongbong Marcos presidency to cover up its domestic mess. And so we go to our first topic of the day, where this all started. Okay? Where this all started. And it started with a tweet of a certain J. Tariela. I will read to you, and you can read with me. If you are a Filipino, whether in government or private sector, regardless of your politics, defending and making excuses for China's aggressive behavior should deem you unpatriotic and a traitor to the Philippines and to our people. Now, note that when we discuss this thing, you know, whether you're in government or private sector, the distinction between being in public and private is already breached. Regardless of your politics, are you supposed to have politics when you are in government service? Well, perhaps if you are elected official, yes. But if you're working for the executive, if you're working for the judiciary or for the legislative for that matter, and you are holding an item in government, you're not supposed to be dealing with politics. All right? Defending and making excuses for China's behavior. It's a conclusion. Where are the premises? And then further concluding, unpatriotic, a traitor to the Philippines and to our people. Given current developments in the West Philippine Sea, I will go back to this later. It is important to show loyalty to the country. It is not only the West Philippine Sea, we should always be loyal to our country. This is not for those fair weather politicians. And he says, while I recognize the freedom of speech, as an important right guaranteed by our Constitution, it should not be misused. What standard is to misuse or to use? Huh? What standard is he using? Why is he censoring our thoughts? Why is he putting our freedom of speech under some caveat or certain provisions? It should be not misused as a means to justify by acting as China's mouthpiece. My goodness, when I went through this, I almost puked. Those of you who do not understand what puke means, I almost vomited. Now let us go to the definition of a traitor. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, a traitor is one who betrays another's trust or is false to an obligation or duty. I am making it as broad as possible because being a traitor does not only apply to your being a citizen, it also applies to your commitments, commitment to your job, and if you're working for the government, commitment to the Constitution that you must uphold, and the public code. Okay? So we'll go back to this. A traitor, one who betrays another's trust or is false to an obligation or duty. Okay? Let us have the first video for tonight. Okay? Here you go.
And we're seeing it right now. It's about to hit the supply boat right now. I've memorized this video. And the reason for that was because on Monday night, we had Mr. Herman Laurel. He is the president of a Manila-based think tank, also long name Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies Institute. And he had this to say about you. I'm going to roll the clip.
It is Tariela who is unpatriotic and traitorous because he just came back from the United States. We have evidence there to show him thanking the U.S. government for his 3-week course there and so on and so forth. He's a tainted source.
Your thoughts, sir?
Okay. Going back again to my transparency initiative, we have been doing this transparency since February. Nobody has ever told me that I'm pro-US. Nobody has ever told me that I'm the US mouthpiece. From February, when we released the military-grade laser, March, we released the video about the swarming of Chinese maritime militia, aggressive actions resulting to dangerous maneuver. Nobody has ever told me that I'm pro-US or I'm siding with the US government in this so-called great power competition. It was only right after I did my tweet, my ex, that people like Mr. Laurel is saying that I'm pro-US and I'm against China. But let us not be confused. Huwag tayong malito. Ang topic dito, it's the People's Republic of China doing aggressive behavior in the against the Philippine Coast Guard and supply boats, and it's not about me, right? And secondly, I really don't know if my stay in Washington for my fellowship, which I never finished because I have to go back early since I was recalled by the Philippine Coast Guard. I only stayed there for barely 11 days. Is one of the best, justification to say that I'm already a tainted source, as what he said, right? So, again, I would like to highlight, ayoko nang habaan ng explanation ko. It's not about me, it's about the People's Republic of China being aggressive in the West Philippine Sea. And secondly, I'm not pro-US, I'm pro-Filipino.
Okay, let's go back. Tariela says, okay, that the tweet was purely personal. Okay, hear this. Commentong Laurel exposes Tariela. All right? Mr. Tariela, in your declaration, the first thing you said was that you were just expressing a personal opinion. Mr. Tariela is a commodore. Is a commodore in the Philippine Coast Guard. If I'm not mistaken, by item, he's supposed to be in charge of human resources of the Philippine Coast Guard. All right? But he has been appointed as Admiral Artemio Abu's sort of advisor for maritime affairs. I don't know what credentials this Tariela has on maritime affairs. I still have to hear a credible statement coming from this guy about the South China Seas. Number two, he was named spokesperson, ad hoc spokesperson for West Philippine Seas. You know, this is an aberration because there's no such thing as a West Philippine Seas. If you go into the International Hydrographic Association mapping and see if any if there's any changes in the map along the Philippines, there is none. And even NAMRI has failed to have this legislated by the Philippine Congress. Secondly, being a Commodore, a public trust is your public office. You have no business expressing your public opinion. You are a public personality. Okay? You are a public figure. There is no such thing as your opinion. You are being paid by the people of the Republic of the Philippines to do your job, not to express your personal opinion anywhere, and especially on the air. Number two, being a spokesperson, kuno, of the Philippine Coast Guard. You said you were moved by your emotions. You have no business becoming an emotional when you are a spokesperson of a government unit. Number three, being part of the PCG entitles you to no authority. You have no business discoursing on foreign policy. Only the President of the Philippines is the chief architect and the one who can initiate a foreign policy in our government. This just showed of your utter incompetence and ignorance about your very duties. And therefore, what you say that this is not about yourself, no, Mr. Tariela, this is all about yourself. You have an ego as big as a mountain, but you have brains only as big as a mole. You know, you sure whatever you learned in school. And when Camentong Laurel says, okay, when Camentong Laurel says that there is proof, all right, that there is proof, because there is in your very own tweet. What did you say? I am incredibly grateful to the East-West Center for granting me the opportunity to pursue my U.S.-Philippine Alliance fellowship, even though I will only have a 2-week window to conduct my research. Why will they give you a fellowship if you have only a 2-week window to conduct your research? This is a remarkable chance for me to connect with key government officials, all right, and policy experts in Washington, D.C., who are ardent supporters of the Philippine government's Transparency Institute. I would like to underline that. Transparency Institute. There. To expose China's aggressive actions and gray zone tactics in West Philippine Sea. You know, this gray zone tactics, I will tell you where it come from later on. All right? So there you are. There you are in your very own, and there is your picture. And there is your picture. So deny this, that you are expressing here in your tweet your asinine devotion to the United States. All right? There. And those are your very words. Okay? Are you a tainted source? Because according to Herman Laurel, you are. All right? And remember our definition of a traitor? One who betrays another's trust or is false to an obligation or duty? Let us unmask J. Tariela right now. And I'm presenting this evidence to you. He is a PMA dropout. What is the Philippine Military Academy probe on cheating all about? Reported January 5, 2004 by the Philippine Star. Port del Pilar, Baguio City. Despite a 20-day temporary restraining order issued by RTC Judge Antonio Reyes last December 23, that was in 2004, PMA officials said they would respect the report. They would prefer to respect the report of the Honor Committee, which proved the alleged cheating. Major Edgar Arevalo, speaking on the Academy's behalf, said the committee found prima facie evidence that 8 cadets cheated in their Management Information Science class. But in their suit, the 8 cadets, I will not mention the others because they are not relevant to my discussion today. There is your name, J. Tariela. You said you were deprived of your constitutional rights to due process? How is that when you are being investigated by an honor committee? Tumakbo kayo sa korte, for a technicality, para hindi maituloy ito. However, court records show that last September 30, the cadets learned that their Management Information Science professor, Jovelyn Hermano, accused them of violating the honor code by allegedly cheating in her class. And the honor committee found you with prima facie evidence. And that is why you left the Philippine Military Academy. Now let me ask you who are listening to me. Does anybody caught cheating, especially in an exam, and in the Philippine Military Academy, that where honor is the biggest thing, can you still trust the person? Isn't he the first traitor that we can consider? All right? Based on our definition, one who betrays another's trust or is false to an obligation or duty. Do you know what the Philippine Military Academy is in our military, in our society, in our educational system? This is J. Tariela. Not only is he a tainted source, he is a cheater. All right? So there you are. Isn't that a person you cannot trust? And of this institution, my goodness, that recently has been tainted with corruption. COA flags Philippine Coast Guard on purchase of 7.8 million bulletproof vehicle. By the way, why are you buying so many vehicles in the Philippine Coast Guard? Are you going to use that to augment your patrol of the West Philippine Sea that you call? All right? The Commission on Audit, not appointment, I'm sorry. The Commission on Audit has flagged the Philippine Coast Guard for its purchase of a bulletproof sports utility vehicle. In 2022, all right, for 7.8 million. My goodness! We are on a post-pandemic recovery. And the Philippine Coast Guard buys 7.8 million without the approval of the Department of Budget and Management. In its audit report, the COA revealed that PCG purchased one Land Cruiser Prado 4.0 V6 gas for 5 million with an add-on cost of 7-8 million for bulletproofing. Ladies and gentlemen, for bulletproofing. also purchased in rebates worth 31 brand new 2023 model Isuzu MUX 4x2 for almost 59 million. Are you going to use this in the South China Sea to patrol? Huh? Mr. Artemio Abo? Huh? And also your spokesperson, Mr. Tariela? All right, Mr. Tariela mentioned a transparency initiative in his narrative to television. He said it's a government entity. It's not a government entity, ladies and gentlemen. It is not a government entity. But the Asia Maritime Transparency Institute that has been sponsoring his activities. And what is the Asia Maritime Transparency Institute? It is an adjunct of the Strat-based Albert de Rosario Institute, of which Albert de Rosario was the late chairman, and co-chairman is Manny Paglinawan. Manny Paglinawan is one of the major stockholders of Philex Mining that has joint venture with Forum Energy. All right? That wants to drill oil at the Recto Reef or the Reed Bank. All right? Tingnan niyo mga vested interest niyan, mga kabansa. Huh? Under the aegis of the First Pacific, based in Hong Kong. One of the companies, one of the holding companies, Pacific Holdings, one of the companies of Anthony Salim, an Indonesian oligarch. Where does Strat-based Albert de Rosario get its funding? From the Center for Strategic and International Studies based in Washington, D.C. Where does this get some of its funding? National Endowment for Democracy, based in Washington, D.C. And we will explain to you how the National Endowment for Democracy is in bed with the Central Intelligence Agency based in Langley, Virginia. There you go. That is the Transparency Institute that Tariela admitted working for, in his very own words, in that same interview that we played. All right? Okay, let's go on. The National Endowment for Democracy is an American organization founded in 1983. All right. NED is primarily funded by an annual allocation from the U.S. Congress. I will repeat. NED is funded primarily by an annual allocation from the U.S. Congress. And NED is not alone in this. It also networks with other funding institutions. All right? And what are these funding institutions? We have the Soros Open Society. We have Umidyar. We have the National Democratic Institute. You also have a Republican group here, etc., etc., etc. All right? Now let us move and identify further what NED is all about. But before that, this is the latest regime change project of the National Endowment for Democracy. The Orange Revolution in Ukraine in 2014. All right? Here we show U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Virginia Nuland visiting Kiev in 2014 And in the midst of the demonstrations there against the pro-Russian government, pro-Russian president. And here she is guided by the ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Piat. All right? There, memorize the face of Victoria Nuland. Victoria Nuland. In 1986, President Carl Gersman said that the NED was created because it would be terrible for the democratic groups around the world to be seen as subsidized by the CIA. We saw that in the 1960s, and that's why it has been discontinued. What happened then, ladies and gentlemen, was that the CIA appropriation was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. 90% of intelligence work is overt. Okay? Overt. All right? 90%. 10% is covert. But because the budget was getting bigger and bigger, it was becoming harder and harder to debate in Congress for an increase in CIA budget. So what they did was the 90% overt, they placed under a new entity called the National Endowment for Democracy, while the 10% covert rests with the CIA. All right? Do you follow? Now, how do we prove this further? Throughout the course of the 2010 investigation by ProPublica, Paul Steiger, editor-in-chief of the publication, said that those who spearheaded the creation of the National Endowment for Democracy have long acknowledged it was part of an effort to move from covert to overt efforts in the name, in the sacred name, in the blessed name of democracy. So that is the handle. That is the deodorant. But actually, this is overt intelligence work. Open, as in open source. Those of you who are familiar with open source, there you have it. From covert to overt efforts to foster democracy. Democracy was the handle. He cited as evidence a 1991 interview in which then NED President Alan Weinstein said, "A lot of what we do today was done covertly 25 years ago by the CIA." And there is your source. Let's move on, because I am doing a lot of topics today. Okay, so what was an orange revolution in Ukraine in 2014 is now the war in Ukraine, my friends. The war in Ukraine. And there is your comedian, matinee idol, Zelensky, whom they have elected as their president. There you are. Do you want something like that, Mr. Tariela? Are you moving towards war? Do you have the permission of the Filipino people to get into this very dangerous grounds? Now, what is the weapon mainly used in other parts of the world other than Ukraine? money. First reported by the American Prospect on February 9, 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, you can check all of the things I'm saying here. They're all available in the internet. All you have to do is backtrack and verify and back it up and compare it with the other sources. That's the sum of the money the U.S. Congress allocated to churn out negative news report on China. The American Competes Act that just got passed by the U.S. House of Representatives earlier this month. The arrival of the $500 million bill to direct disinformation against China suggests that the U.S. is preparing to reopen its Cold War toolbox. This Cold War toolbox to wage yet another propaganda campaign. Under the disguise of a free press and objective reporting, the U.S. is now eyeing a chance to sponsor its media squads to reenact the role as an instigator rather than a reporter. There you go. And that is the American Prospect on February 9, 2022. Okay? Let's move on and quickly. So there you go. The American Competes Act on the left side by the United States as a tool for their, paid diplomacy, or what we call lawfare, the use of legal means, of legal argumentations as a war weapon, or weaponizing information. And what does China have? China have the Belt and Road Initiative. What is the Belt and Road Initiative? The Belt and Road Initiative is helping other nations share in the vision and mission of China for a shared humanity. For a shared humanity. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's go back to Ricardo Saludo and pick up what some people are saying on what he has been reckless about. Yung pong bibig ni Tariela na hindi mapigilan. At hindi ko naman maintindihan, President Marcos Jr., why you are tolerating such a mediocre ignoramus. Not my word. I will tell you where I picked it up later on. First, Ricardo Saludo. Is our world headed for Third World War? First, Commodore Tariela should realize that explaining the reasoning and justification for foreign actions is needed to fully assess incidents. As national defense, foreign affairs, and national security officials can explain. You are not even part of national defense. You're not even part of foreign affairs. You're not even part of the National Security Council. You are a Coast Guard under the Department of Transportation. So, know where you stand. Second, the Philippine Coast Guard should respond to arguments raised by the other side rather than seek to silence them by labeling contrary comments as unpatriotic and disloyal. The right way to silence critics is through counter-argumentation, not character assassination. In short, debate. Last and maybe most important, bringing patriotism into any controversy. Ladies and gentlemen, could tar own side with the same brush And that was what you were saying, that you were not pro-US, that you were pro-Filipino. With Tariela's tweet, one can ask, who are truly traitorous? Journalists and tweeters citing China's rationale and justifications for its maritime action? Or our national leaders and leading media keeping mum or keeping quiet about the immense dangers to Filipinos from attacks on 9 Philippine bases open to the United States, which U.S. generals, defense experts, and media expect in a U.S.-China war? There you go. This is Ricardo Saludo, member of the cabinet of the GMA administration. And at this point, I would like to quote an American, Isaac Asimov. Thank you, Sas Ricardo Sasot, for this quotation. When stupidity is considered patriotism, it is unsafe to be intelligent. I would like to repeat that for your sake, Mr. Tariela. When stupidity is considered patriotism, it is unsafe to be intelligent. We move to the next real expert in analyzing and writing about this current issues. Rigoberto Teglao, under the Philippines did promise to remove BRP Sierra Madre from Ayungin. The Foreign Affairs Department is shamelessly irresponsible in its refusal to correct the claims of such ignorant jingoists as National Security Spokesman Jonathan Malaya and Coast Guard J. Tariela. You see? Wala siyang takot mag-name ng mga pangalan. The NSC's Malaya and his ilk, especially that ignoramus, oh, that's where I got it, not mine, but Rigoberto Tiglao's, Coast Guard Officer J. Tariela have no business saying anything about another country, especially in a crisis situation, as this involves foreign affairs policy, which only the President is authorized to determine under our Constitution. You are even violating the Constitution pala. Huh? They have in their power tripping, portrayed our country as one that doesn't keep its word, or one where a succeeding president doesn't recognize a commitment to another country a previous president made. You have in fact entrapped President Bongbong Marcos, who said, I am not aware of such an agreement, and if there exists such an agreement, then right this very moment, I am rescinding it. Pinahamak niyo pa ang Pangulo ng Pilipinas. Ito naman si Bongbong ay lutang na lutang. Sakay na sakay. To continue the quotes, haven't they noticed in the South China Sea disputes that it has been only the spokesman of China's foreign ministry and in a few instances the Chinese ambassador here who have commented on this foreign affairs matter? Has any officer of the People's Liberation Army or Coast Guard ever spoken against the Philippines? My God, nakakahiya tayo. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry in government, every mediocre appointee of Bongbong Marcos speaks about foreign policy. Have we gone out of our minds? Pinahamak pa natin ang Pangulo. Pinahamak pa ninyo, Malaya. At ikaw, Tariela, ano pinagsasabi mo, this is not about me? My gosh. Tuloy natin ang diskurso. Eto, punta tayo kay Herman Laurel. On an earlier incident last June 30, since Commodore now Vice Admiral Balilo has been straightforward in answering inquiries. Ito po yung totoong spokesman ng Philippine Coast Guard. Pero ayaw niya mag-deal. Ayaw niya i-violate ang kanyang constitutional duty. Ha? Ayaw niya mag-power tripping. The U.S. assets had to establish a new spokesman on the issue, and this is Tariela. Don't tell me nobody has been accusing you. We have been accusing you since we saw your face. Ha? Umattend ka pa doon sa Singapore, and you attempted to humiliate the Chinese Minister of Defense, Li Shangfu. Nakakahiya ka. Hindi bali sana kung may tsura ka. Hindi na tayo pupunta dyan. Upon recommendation of ex-Justice Antonio Carpio, the U.S., Commodore J. Tradera was designated as West Philippine Sea spokesman. Kasasabi ko lang kanina that the West Philippine Sea does not exist. Because this is only a creation of an executive order by Noynoy Aquino and has no bite, no effectivity. This is a slogan. This West Philippine Sea, not even recorded in the International Hydrographic Association. So ano ang sinabi ni Tariela doon sa earlier incident last June 30? Chinese Coast Guard blocked the resupply boat. Ano sabi ni Balilo? Wala naging escalation. Nung unang tanong si Balilo, ito ho sinabi ni Balilo. Ito si Balilo. I have no information. In other words, it was not an official trip by the Philippine Coast Guard. Because otherwise, the guy in charge of information would have known about it. Don't tell me na may carte blanche si Tariela over the head of a Rear Admiral. Balilo? Mag-usap nga kayo, Balilo, tsaka si Tariela, tsaka ikaw, Abo. Ano ba mga kalokohan ginagawa dyan? Chicken mo yung ginagawa ni Abo dyan at tsaka ni Tariela. Because we respect you, Rear Admiral Balilo. Napakagaling mo, especially sa disasters. Very exact ang mga report mo. Verified. Pagdating dito kay Abo, tsaka dito kay Tariela, puro palpak. So ano? He is unable to confirm at that time. But, eventually, you found out, wala namang naging escalation. There is no escalation. We were able to complete the mission to reach the BRP, Sierra Madre, and resupply. So, ano yung sinasabi mo, Tariela, that they were blocked? Inuulit mo lang ito sinasabi ng talking head ngayon na CIA dito sa usapin dito, itong taga-Gordon Center on National Security Innovation ng Stanford University na si Raymond Powell, who said, from an ex-U.S. Air Force Raymond Powell perspective, the Chinese Coast Guard were in a position to interdict. We strongly suggest that the Chinese Coast Guard was positionally stationary. It could be seen that the Philippine ship boats were, with the cameras rolling and veering at the last moments away to accomplish the mission of delivering the supplies while getting footage to pretend Chinese harassment. Ano? Kayo mismo ni Balilo, hindi nagkakasundo. Well, anyway, let's just project and leave Tariela for a while and go to the more important policy-sensitive issues. More jingoism? Let's go to the first tape, or first video of our dear Senate President.
This is psychological warfare at its best. when we're all rallying ourselves together behind the men and women of the Air Force and the Navy and the Coast Guard, they try to come up with a statement that will make us fight internally. It's Psywar. We should not succumb to the psychological warfare. Dapat nagkakaisa po tayo na sumuporta sa ating Navy at sa ating Coast Guard at sa ating soberenya sa West Philippine Sea. All Filipinos should rally together.
And then what happened? You went to Washington, D.C., Mr. Subiri. And there, in your very own tweet, had a productive meeting with U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, Victoria Nuland, discussing how to further strengthen our economic partnership and security cooperation. This is part of the working visit to Washington to meet the members of the U.S. Congress and officials of U.S. government regarding bilateral cooperation between the U.S. and the PH. What are you doing with bilateral cooperation? You are supposed to be the Senate President. Are you the President of the Philippines? By the way, kung hindi nyo na natatandaan, mga kabansa, si Victoria Nuland, balikan natin, no? Balikan natin. Ayan ho si Victoria Nuland. Ha? Yun hong nagpakulo ng Orange Revolution in Ukraine in 2014 that resulted in many deaths and more deaths in the war of Ukraine in 2022. So, what is the business of Subiri meeting with Victoria Nuland? Let's go to the next tape of Subiri. Tape number 2.
Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri is suggesting a boycott on all Chinese companies and products as a sign of protest against its continued harassment in Philippine waters. In a radio interview, Zubiri says that the Philippines should start looking for other trading partners instead of relying on China. Zubiri adds that the country should boycott Chinese-made products and Chinese companies coming in to show anger towards them. He says that the Philippines may reopen its free trade agreements with other countries like the United States, European Union, Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asian countries. His call for a boycott comes after China's water cannon attack on Philippine vessels delivering supplies to Filipino troops stationed at a Union Shoal.
My God, Mr. Subiri, pinakialaman mo na ang trabaho ng presidente, pinakialaman mo pa ang trabaho ng trade, ng agriculture, ng commerce. Kaya nakabatitigil. You are even advocated a boycott. You are even advocating a boycott of China. Ano na nangyari sa'yo? Lumutang ka na rin. Nakisawsaw ka na rin dito. Ano na bang bansa nire-represent mo ngayon? Ano ba? Na-recruit ka ba ni Victoria Nuland? Bakit ka napakita in the first place with Victoria Nuland? What is your business with the Secretary of State? Under Foreign Affairs yan. You are supposed to enact laws. You're not supposed to determine foreign policy. Ito ang advice sa iyo ni Cecilio Pedro, President ng Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chambers of Commerce and Industry. Roll the tape, please.
Nakakatakot dito. Baka tayo i-boycott din nila. Hindi nila bibili yung mga exports natin ng mga produkto galing sa Pilipinas. Mainly ang mga agricultural products natin tulad ng banana, pineapple, even mga mining materials. Ang dami rin natin ini-export sa China. Ito po'y pag binoykot ng China, tayo po'y malaking pinsala po sa atin yan. So I don't think this is the right way to move forward. What we should do is probably to sit down with them and finally make an agreement. Kung anong pwede, kung anong hindi pwede. Diba? Kung mag-aaway-away, walang laban tayo dahil malaki po sila. At saka kung makikipag-aaway tayo, baka sumali pa yung US. Tayo ang mapipinsala, tayo ang gagamitin nila pang-away sa China. Nakaupo lang sila sa likod ang Amerika. So tayo rin na mahihirapan. Bakit tayo pupunta sa giyera? Ang kailangan natin dito ay a peaceful environment for us to invest, continue doing business, and continue to improve our economy. We're at the height na nangunguna ngayon tayo sa economic growth dito sa Asia, even in the world. So bakit sisirain natin itong opportunity na binibigay sa atin ng Panginoon? So ito po'y sa aming mga negosyante dito sa Pilipinas, especially Filipino-Chinese, naniniwala kami, hindi po yan ang magandang paraan. Kailangan pag-isipan natin kung anong maganda para sa atin at para sa China.
Isa rin sa nakikitang magandang gawin ng Pilipinas sa halip ng pagbaboycott ng bansa sa produkto ng China ang pagkakaroon ng kooperasyon.
The best way is cooperation, hindi yung ibo-boycott. Because pag binoycott natin, sila din magbo-boycott sa atin.
Okay, let's show this slide. Alam po ninyo, patapos na ang programa ko ngayong araw na ito. Nai-relay ko na sa inyo mga kabansa kung ano mga kapalpakan, kung ano mga inuuna ng ating gobyerno. Gulo, sigalot, panggagatong sa South China Sea. And yet, South China Sea is a very small part of our foreign policy, of our domestic policy. Nagpapasikat yung Tariela, yung Subiri na yan, yung Malaya na yan. Sumasaw na si Jinggoy at yung Unggoy. Sumausaw na lahat ng tao dito. And of late, may bumabalik na sangganong senador. Yung nawalang senador nung panahon ni Duterte. Si Antonio Trillanes. Bumabalik, mga kabansa. Nagdurugo ang puso ko because the way to go is to join the proposed BRICS expansion. What is this all about? BRICS countries will meet on August 22 to 24, mga kabansa. For another summit. These are the major emerging economies of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, for which the acronym BRICS stands for. Meeting on its 15th occasion, heads of state and heads of government. Alam po ninyo, kapag kasalukuyan, BRICS already constitute 32% of global GDP, gross domestic product, overtaken na nila ang G7 countries led by the US na 30%. And it represents already yung present membership nila ng 43% of the world's population. To top this, BRICS has attracted the interest of 22 countries, such as Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Egypt, Venezuela, the United Arab Emirates, and 20 more observer nations keen on joining the line to membership, and they will attend the summit in Johannesburg. If accepted, the new proposed BRICS members would create an entity with a gross domestic product 30% larger than the US. Over 50% representation of the global population, and in control of 60% of the global gas interests. BRICS has shown the durability, the global South dream. Sino yung South? Ito po tayo. We belong to the global South. Ibig sabihin, yung mga mahihirap na countries, developing, to create a better world than the past 500 years of colonialism and Cold Wars that is based on the concept of multipolar, hindi unipolar, hindi one superpower serving as a hegemon dominating the entire world. Multipolar, global political economic order driven by the infrastructure for economic development and equity, and spurring not only material advancement, but likewise drives civilizational convergence. Most of all, mga kabansa, based on universal respect, not power tripping. Yan po ang magiging bagong realidad. Palubog na po ang US dollar as the international currency. And BRICS will be trading, as they are now trading, in the respective currency and designate a new currency. Ha? So, ang tanong ko, mga kabansa, ang tanong ko, if this is the way to go, what are the Philippine traitors waiting for? Kayo na nagkakandara pa sa sibuyas, sa bigas, sa asukal, ha? Kayo nagkakandara pa sa airport. Pinaltan niyo yung air conditioning ng NAIA 3 ng oven. Sabi ng pinagtatawan. At ako yung NAIA 1 ng mistulang imbudo ng mga tao. Ano ba nangyayari sa inyo? Yung baha, binabara nung isang napakalaking reclamation dyan. 2,500 hectares. And yet, wala sa listahan ng mga reclamation. Dahil hindi naman daw reclamation yon. Yun sana ho ang didiscussing ko ngayong araw na ito. Except that times are fleeting so fast, babalikan ko na lang yon, no? At ako humihingi ng paumanhin doon sa mga nag-abang sa inyo dahil doon, ng mga taga-Bulacan, taga-Pampanga, taga-Nueva Ecija. Ano ang excuse me. Ano ang hinihintay ng mga Philippine traitors? Ang Indonesia, following the China's Belt and Road Initiative, in just 15 years, mga kabansa, ha? Sinisimula ni GMA yan eh. Yung strategic cooperation with China. Pero anong ginawa nyo kay GMA? Insofar as this foreign policy is concerned. So, we wasted 6 years under Noynoy Aquino. Dinumog siya nitong si Albert de Rosario at si Manny Pangilinan. At ninuso-nguso siya laban sa mga Chino. Nawalan tayo ng Scarborough Shoal, nag-arbitral ruling, nawalan tayo ng Kalayaan Island Group. Six years. Nakabawi, 6 years under Duterte. So 12 years yun. 3 years under GMA, 15 years. In 15 years, Indonesia has grown to be the number 10 manufacturing country in the world. Number 10 manufacturing country in the world, and I always keep on repeating yung palang paborito kong sabon. No, ako'y bata pa, yung Lifebuoy. Aba, made na po in Indonesia. At number 7 na siya pagdating sa standard of living, measured by the relationship of purchasing power parity versus gross domestic product. Ano ibig sabihin nito? Standard of living. Yung alisin na nga muna natin. Yung strength ng kanilang currency, mga kabansa. Mas maraming nabibili ang kanilang currency. nakakabili ng 4. Alam niyo ba ang ratio sa Philippines? 4:1. Yung 4 na nabibili nila sa bawat piso natin. Can you imagine ang lakas ng currency ng Indonesia? At ngayon, nag-a-apply pa siya as a member of BRICS. Mga kabansa. Napag-iwanan tayo ng Indonesia. 15 years window lang. At hindi lang yon, Indonesia. Lagi natin pinagmamalaki strategic, geopolitical, geoeconomic positioning by the Lord God Almighty in the center of the Pacific map from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Pag binaliktad nyo kasi yung mapa na laging pinakikita sa world, makikita nyo na ang Pilipinas ay nasa sentro pala, from top to bottom, from left to right. And yet, bakit hindi tayo? Dahil 15 years nagtatrabaho Indonesia, tayo namumulitika, tayo nag-aaway-away. Inihabol ng 6 years para humabol ng Pilipinas under Duterte, pero behind pa rin tayo ng 9 years. At ngayon, 10 years na. Dahil nagtapos yung unang taon ni Bongbong Marcos, walang achievements. Puro panggigera, puro bases, puro South China Sea, puro, ano ba naman yung pinag-aawayan nyo dyan? Isang kalawak. Diyos mio! Kinalawang na ang inyong pinagtatanggol dyan. Gusto nyo pang isalba? Dahil testosterone lang ang mentalidad ninyo? Utak pulbura lang kayo? Bakit? Bakit kailangan mahuli tayo? So habang natutulog tayo at kung ano-ano ating inaasikaso, Indonesia na po ang magiging transshipment point. No? Alright? Paano ito? Mula China, papuntang BIMP, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, yung tinatawag nating East Asia Growth Area, IAGA, papuntang Australia, at saka New Zealand, at papuntang Oceania. Bakit importante ito? Dahil ito ang wave na magdadala ng komersyo sa South America for the modernization of South America. Yan ang transshipment point, mga kabansa. So, ano ang ating leksyon ngayong araw na ito? Isa lamang ang tanong ko. Kung nagawa ng Indonesia yan, why can't we do it? Why can't we do it? Ang sagot, mga kabansa, because the Filipino has a problem for every solution. Ito po ang inyong lingkod, Paglinawan, nagpapasalamat ng muli sa inyong pagtangkilik at magkita-kita po tayo ulit sa Sabado. Ito na po, mga kabansa, mga nakisama sa ating ngayong araw na ito. Christopher Cruz, magandang hapon sa lahat ng mga katipon. May swarming daw ng Chinese sa South China Sea. Asa kaya yon? Haha, may horror na flick na swarm, baka yun ang napanood mo, Sir Tariela. Oy, Subiri, panigurado yung underwear mo ay China-made. Ha, ha, ha. Malabo ang Pinas na makasali dyan sa BRICS habang hawak tayo ng mga globalista. Ha? OG Hoxon, good evening mga kabansa, kaado kamento Diyos. Guys Center, gusto ni Subiri ang gawing Zelensky ang Pilipinas. Elkas, yes, good PM. Maestro Ado, watch here in Riyadh. God bless po. Anong title ng opening song po ninyo? Get ready! Salamat po. At nandyan po mga katulad nyo ni Naka Mentong, Ma'am Sas, Ana Malindugoy at Bubi Tiglao. 109,980,000 na pala ang Pilipino. 20K oligarchs perhaps. Ano po pwedeng gawin ng pangkaraniwang Pinoy para po di masama sa gera, Maestro Ado? The bilateral negotiations, the way to peace is always peace talks to avoid war. Argules, Hulselito, Kaado, dapat pong pag-isipan ng gobyerno ang 1,000,000 beses yung balak nila America at Philippines Coast Guard na joint patrol sa South China Sea o WPS. Pag nairita ang China, gera pupuntahan. Ang halimbawa ko dyan, Kaado, ay may kapitbahay bumili ng tinda sa sari-sari store ko. Ako naman ang umigib sa poso dyan ng tubig, tapos may puno siya ng mangga, nasa bakuran ko yon, kalahati ng sang. Joel Rivera, good evening, Kaado. Salita pa lang ni Tariela, pakano-kano accent siya. If Tariela is the spokes for WPS, Locsin is the special envoy to China, ano mangyayari sa atin? Wala. Dahil yan si Locsin ang nagsabotahe ng oil deal dyan. Ewan ko ba ito si BBM? Ewan ko ba kung totoo yan si Locsin? Jacqueline Trajano, good PM po. Ado, sabihin nyo sa mga publiko sa atin, manood ng foreign news para makita nila ang Pilipinas talagang na magagamit sa intensyon ng kano na ibagsak ang ekonomiya ng China dahil sa inggit. Hindi ho babagsak ang ekonomiya ng China. Ang pabagsak po ay ekonomiya at military ng Estados Unidos. Lynn Muta Sarco, good evening, watching from Bacolod City. Joselito Candido Biderio, good evening po, Kaado, mabuhay kayo, watching from Damam, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Ayan, Osman Mohammed Zin, ay nako, too many cook, too many cooks in government, and PPM have no control of them. They can do or say what they want and what they like. Maskara, Subiri, Defense Secretary Teodoro at iba pa. At masasabi ko lang po na dahil nag-announce ang Armed Forces of the Philippines at ang threat sa China na wag blacken ang susunod or else, ano bang pinagmamalaki natin? Hindi naman ho Coast Guard ng China, hindi naman ho military ng China ang haharang sa inyo dyan. Ang haharang ho sa inyo dyan ay mga ordinaryong citizen ng China. Paiikutan lang kayo ng mga maliliit na bangka, mga swarm ng mga fishing boats, tapos na kayo. Wala na kayo. Anong klase yung sinasabi ninyo na what is ours sa isang phantom territory na hindi naman nyo ma-enforce ang inyong administration and control? Paano magiging atin yan? Balikan natin ang ating mga panuntunan. Tanungin natin ating mga government official, bakit niloloko nila mga tao na atin yan? At imbestigahin natin sa nila ginastos yung 1 billion para dyan sa arbitral ruling na yan. At sino nakinabang dyan? Sino nagkapera dyan? At sino nagsanla? At sino ang mga tunay na traidor sa bayan? Mga kabansa, kami magsasabi ng katotohanan, never kami magiging traidor. You can test the information basis of what we are telling the people. And, my God, uulitin ko lamang itong binasa ko kanina, when stupidity is confused with patriotism, it is unsafe to be intelligent, according to Isaac Asimov. Wow! Kung ganun pala, mag-iingat na rin ako. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Magkita-kita tayo sa Sabado muli. At for the meantime, keep safe, keep reading, researching, be informed. Huwag tayong tangiay. Thank you very much. This is ang Maestro. Nagpapaalam na.
Take a red eye. It's time to go. It's time to go. Get ready.